It's October, dear dread denizens of the internet, and you know what that means. It's the month of ghouls, ghosts, witches, and skeletons. A time where we don our masks, okay, our spooky masks in this year's case, and dive deep into candy, trick-or-treating, parties, and best of all, the genre of horror. Movies, television, and best of all, video games. Ah yes, the horror genre of video games holds a special place in my heart. Ever since I was young, watching my big sister play Resident Evil 2 on the PS1, and being so shit scared by the death scenes, I never touched it again until I was an adult. Then a similar thing happening years later when I myself played Silent Hill 2 on the Xbox and got so damn frightened I turned the game off. Mind you, I was just wandering the streets of Silent Hill, barely even an hour into the damn thing. Then both of those titles got remastered and I got shit scared once again as an adult. Hooray! In spite of my skittish nature when I was younger though, I still summoned the courage to take on some of gaming's most dreadful examples of horror. I mentioned Resident Evil and Silent Hill already, those two being the catalyst for my interest in horror gaming, but there were a ton of other great titles as well. There was Dino Crisis, the dinosaur-based survival horror game, and Capcom's Red-Headed Stepchild. There was The Suffering, a horror game set in a prison with monsters based on various methods of execution. Dead Space, Fatal Frame, Siren, Alan Wake, and lest I forget it, the best horror game ever released, Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem. But since none of those games are in the title of the video, we're clearly not talking about any of them. I'm here to talk about a game that occupies a bit of a strange space in my life. Parasite Eve. My experience with Parasite Eve as a kid was as follows. I watched my older sister play it a bit, it spooked me, and it had a weird combat system. That's pretty much it. Parasite Eve seems to have gotten lost in the horror game shuffle a bit, in spite of the first one being considered one of the defining horror titles of the PlayStation 1. It being able to stand side by side with the likes of Resident Evil and Silent Hill in most people's minds certainly paints it in a super positive light, but is it worthy of its rep? Let's find out. Parasite Eve is a 1998 action role-playing / survival horror game developed and published by Square. Parasite Eve actually serves as a sequel to the book by the same name. Parasite Eve, the novel, was published in 1995 and written by Hideaki Senna. I sure hope that's how you pronounce that name. The novel took home the first ever Japan Horror Novel Award and, much like the game, is considered a classic. For reference, you don't need to have read the book to understand anything in this game. Shit, I didn't even know this game was a sequel to a book until I was doing research for this video. The game only makes a passing reference to the novel, but check it out if you're looking for a good horror novel this Halloween. I'm gonna start getting into the story of Parasite Eve, so spoiler warnings from here on out. I know, I don't usually give those in these videos, but after playing through Parasite Eve, I genuinely think it's worth a play if you're looking for a horror game to experience this season. Parasite Eve takes place in New York City, starting on Christmas Eve, 1997. We join our main character on a date to the opera at Carnegie Hall with some random dude. A quick note, this game lets you name the main character whatever you want, and I ended up naming her Leona. Canonically, the character is named Aya, and I'll probably keep calling her that, so just to clear up any confusion, Aya equals Leona. Aya and her date take their seats at the opera, and the show begins. Huh. This is the same thing that happened to the audience at the showing of Cats that I went to. The crowd begins spontaneously bursting into flames, all, curiously, except for our little protagonist, Aya. Aya, with no hesitation, I might add, draws her heater, knocks her worthless date out of the way, and heads to confront the cause of the incident, the actress, still on stage. The actress speaks to Aya, talking about how Aya's cells are attempting to communicate with her before the two engage in combat. Now, let's talk about the combat system in Parasite Eve really quick. PE is unique in that, unlike similar horror games of the time in Resident Evil and Silent Hill, which allow combat entirely in real time, Parasite Eve has a mix of real time and using an ATB system for your attacks, or magic, or item usage, on top of your battles being fought via a random encounter in a predetermined bit of the landscape in a given fight. You have full control of Aya during the combat screen, allowing you to evade enemy attacks and position yourself for more effective shots. Honestly, I was kinda expecting the system to feel clunky from what I remembered, but it's actually pretty awesome. You have to be smart, use your positioning properly to maximize your gun damage, and be quick to evade your opponent's attacks as well. Speaking of the combat, Parasite Eve gives you one hell of an arsenal to do it with. Handguns, clubs, shotguns, machine guns, rifles, grenade launchers, and even rocket launchers too. Thankfully as well, all of your weapons, barring the rocket launcher, pull from the same ammunition crate, meaning you don't have to juggle different ammunitions between every different type of firearm. The arsenal at your fingertips can also be smacked up with special abilities that can be attached to them. These include splash damage, various types of special ammunition which enemies can be vulnerable to, different rates of fire, quick draw, and tons of others. Even your basic police baton tends to come with the special ability to steal items from your targets, giving it a use in this game. Even better, all of these attributes can be transferred freely to other guns, so later in the game you can have a pistol that fires shotgun shells that are laced with tranquilizer and can be fired up to 6 times a round. In addition to your various guns, you'll also have access to the game's magic system, or Parasite Energy as it's called in-game, but a spade's a spade in my opinion, so it's magic. Your Parasite Energy grants you access to a ton of special powers. They're mostly supportive in nature, heals, and cleanses, and a revive as well, but with a few limited offensive options as well, like the energy shot. These are accompanied by various items which serve the same purpose but don't cause your PE to use. You'll need all the firepower and aid you can get too, since you'll have to do battle with all sorts of twisted, horrifying creatures on top of our good friend Mitochondrial Eve. Speaking of Eve, after getting some caps popped into her candy ass, Eve claims Aya should know her well and triggers the first flashback sequence of the game. A hazy vision of a hospital bed and a little girl. You snap back to reality and Eve fucks off deeper into Carnegie Hall. Upon jumping down into the hole to pursue Eve, you run across the little girl from your flashback and... Here in the bowels of Carnegie Hall, you'll encounter your first neo-mitochondrial creature, or NMC for short. A humble rat mutated by its mitochondria and accompanied by a sick cutscene of said mutation. These mutation scenes are amazing. Even with the dated graphics of the PS1, they look bloody and disgusting. I honestly wish there were more over the course of this game. NMCs come in all sorts of varieties. Bats, cats, snakes, plants, germs, I think? This is a monkey, apparently. Bears, man-mosquitoes, whatever the fuck this thing is. I'm getting Futurama flashbacks here, so I'm moving on now. Werewolves and all sorts of crazy shit, really. All these creatures come at you with a variety of attacks and status effects as well, such as blind and lowering your defense. All of their attacks have tells and patterns though, so you can learn to evade and position yourself to return fire effectively. Okay, I think that covers basically all the game's mechanics, so from here on out I can focus on the story entirely. You confront Eve once again, she chimps out. You fight Eve once again, and after popping some shots into her, she states that Aya needs some more time until her mitochondria is really free, and forces a flashback to escape. Flashback this time has a mysterious man arrive in the hospital room from earlier. You come to and Eve is gone, fled into the sewers beneath Carnegie Hall. Aya pursues, and before she can stomp a mud hole in Eve's ass once again, Eve T-1000s her way through some bars and sticks a mutated sewer gator on you. Aya deals with the beast without problems and stumbles back to the front door of the theater, only to be immediately harassed by the press outside. Thankfully, Aya's partner on the force, Daniel, is there to deal with them. Daniel gets you out of there, and day one ends with this very strong quote from our protagonist. It all started with this incident. 6 days that were to become a nightmare for all. People will eventually forget and go on with their lives, but I will never forget it. It was pure terror, but it was also 6 days filled with familiar memories. Day 2 dawns at Aya's place of work, the NYPD precinct number 17. You meet the chief, who orders you to get a better weapon from the armory. Here you meet Torres, a seasoned officer of the force, and Wayne, his apprentice. Wayne's not particularly important right now, but he will end up being critical to you, since he's the one who will store all your extra crap, and later on crafts the strongest weapons in the game. As a quick sidebar, you get the strongest weapons in the game by collecting 300 junks, an item carried by like 2 monsters, one of which has a good drop rate. This isn't necessary to do, but I wish there was a less grindy way to get an ultimate weapon. Even worse, to get the super duper strongest weapons, you have to let Wayne decide what kind of gun to make you himself, which should be fine if he didn't have a chance to fuck it up. Wow, super junk and duper junk. Thanks, Wayne. Really. After a brief disastrous press conference, you hear about a local doctor who is currently doing research on mitochondria, and since that's what Eve mentioned during their encounter, Aya and Daniel head off to get some information from the ever-crotchety Dr. Clamp. He types rhythmically and tells you about how mitochondria is a superior form of life compared to us humans, and we have some sort of strange symbiotic relationship with them. Then he tells you to fuck off, which is okay since Eve is on the prowl again, this time going for an encore performance in Central Park. Daniel realizes his wife and son are gonna be at said show and immediately takes off, with Aya at his back since good partners always back each other up. Aya is the one that has to explore the area though, since Daniel would combust just like any other normal human. I like this part a good bit since you have to go through Central Park Zoo as well, which means you encounter more crazy NMCs. The white I do wonder why the zoo has a grenade launcher in storage. You encounter Eve once more in Central Park, and this time she pulls a stunt far more horrifying and disgusting than what happened at Carnegie Hall. She melts and congeals the whole damn crowd into a pile of living flesh. Shit, that is so fucking cool. I want this game to get remade just to see this scene in glorious high definition. The chase is on once again, with you once again running into that same little girl that you met back at Carnegie Hall a day ago. Aya confronts Eve, who invites her on a carriage ride across New York. Why Aya accepts this instead of just blasting the bitch, I don't know, but what I do know is horses run much faster when they're on fire. After a brief battle, the carriage crashes, Aya passes out, and you move on to Day 3. Day 3 is where you're introduced to Japanese scientist Kunihiko Maeda, who runs past a police blockade and is the one that retrieves Aya and takes her to safety, alongside Daniel, of course.
So are you Chinese or Japanese?
The rest of the game plays out pretty similarly to this, Aya and her companions pursuing Eve across New York City in a deadly game of cat and mouse. All the while, Aya has flashbacks of her and her little sister in a hospital, a mysterious doctor standing over them. I say mysterious, but it's pretty obvious who it is. You learn over the course of the game that Aya's sister, Maya, and their mother both died in the same car crash years ago, her organs being donated to Aya and Melissa as well, who received Maya's kidney and ended up being weakened just enough by immunosuppressants for Eve to take her body over. You also learn that this is Eve's second attempt to evolve and take over the world, the first attempt being detailed in the book. Now all Eve needs is the perfect sperm cell to impregnate herself with and give birth to the ultimate being. And on Day 4, thanks to the assistance of Dr. Clamp, Eve acquires said sperm at the local hospital and uses the nearby museum as her hideaway until she can give birth, leaving you to deal with the massive spider on the rooftop of the hospital and a failed military strike that comes afterwards. On Day 5, you storm the museum and are greeted by dinosaurs. Yeah, Eve uses the bones in the museum to resurrect raptors, pterodactyls, a triceratops, and a fucking T-Rex to stop you. Fortunately for Eve though, Aya is the baddest of bitches, with none of these creatures even slowing her down a bit. Aya confronts Eve in the bowels of the museum, but the massive flesh snatches up Eve and takes her away to safety before you can end it right then and there. Around this time, the military has caught wind of Aya and her immunity, and sends a chopper to pick her up, and you discuss the plan to deal with Eve, which is the standard military plan of just dropping a fucking nuke on her. Simple. Aya bravely accepts the plan and with an escort, takes off in her helicopter and to face destiny. Which, shout out to these pilots that accompany Aya. They knew it was a suicide mission and their only point was to draw fire away from her so she can deliver the payload successfully. Heroes are remembered, guys, and I'll never forget any character that gives up their lives for mine. The bomb is dropped, and Eve survives. Until Aya comes in, stomps up to the Statue of Liberty, and puts the bitch down herself. With Eve dead, our heroes can finally rest aboard the nearby aircraft carrier. Oops! We were just a bit too late. The ultimate being is born, and once again, it's up to Aya to defeat the monster while her comrades flee to safety. You battle the ultimate being as it rapidly evolves from a little baby to a big monster to an even bigger monster. To an even bigger monster in its very final form. All hope seems lost as your guns barely do any damage to the final phase of the ultimate being. Fortunately, there is one option left. Maeda has crafted a handgun that fires specialized bullets coated with the cells he harvested from the goop left on Aya. Problem is, Maeda and those bullets are on the helicopter way above Aya and the ultimate being. How will the heroes solve this problem? Well... what a fucking beast, seriously. That's it, Daniel's the best partner in any horror game ever. Motherfucker grabs the damn bullets, jumps out of the goddamn helicopter, no parachute, for reference, and hucks the damn bullets to Aya before bursting into flames and crashing into the water below. Fuck Barry Burton, fuck Rebecca Chambers, Daniel Dulles is the best partner ever. The bullets work, thankfully, and the ultimate being dies. Just kidding, it's hobbled and pissed off now, but not quite dead yet. Aya comes up with a plan and runs deeper into the aircraft carrier, ultimate being in hot pursuit. Aya sets the boiler to blow and escapes the ship. The carrier explodes, sending the ultimate being to hell once and for all. Aya swims to shore, safe. and it's finally over. After all the death and destruction, things can finally return to normal. After the events of the game transpire, our heroes head to Carnegie to try to relax. But suddenly... Aya communicates with the mitochondria of every member of the audience, a haunting callback to the start of the game where Eve says, "The more you use your powers, the more you become like me." Parasite Eve ends on this rather ambiguous note. Surprise though, you've unlocked the EX game, and what's there? Well, for one, the ability to start with whatever super weapon and armor set you made for yourself in your first playthrough, on top of a new location on the world map, the Chrysler Building. What's there? The game's secret ending. Unfortunately, the Chrysler Building segment kinda fucking blows. It's a 70-floor dungeon that's almost entirely randomly generated, so you basically have to wander aimlessly in the hopes of finding the loot room and the stairway up to the next floor. A boss also awaits you every 10th floor with all sorts of NMCs along the way. These parts drag on, and honestly, it's kinda boring. Which is sad because the base game is paced so well compared to this. It also doesn't help that the bosses just kinda feel like sacks of HP with near one-hit kill attacks, and later on with really unneeded healing spells as well. Seriously, the boss waiting for you at the top of the tower has like 48,000 hit points, and my gun only did a little over 300 damage a round. That on top of the boss having a scaling heal that went up by 1k HP every time I shot her at the wrong moment made it feel so blatantly unfun. Maybe I could have optimized better for this fight, but still, that's fucking ridiculous. So I'll save you the stress and spoil you the true ending here. At the top of the Chrysler Building, you encounter your little sister, Maya. Still alive after all, but under the control of mitochondrial Eve. She explains to you that she is the True Blood Eve and is nesting in the Chrysler Building in case the Ultimate Being and Melissa fail. Aya battles the True Blood Eve in her evolved form. You gun the monster down, but in seeing that Aya's mitochondria is far superior to Maya's, Eve attempts to seize control of Aya's body. However, Maya returns with a vengeance and calls Eve from existence, ending the monster once and for all. Aya's mitochondrial powers vanish, and she comes to the realization that Maya has always been with her. She returns home, and the game's true ending is finished. So, that's Parasite Eve, an all-time horror classic. What are my thoughts? This game has definitely earned its reputation as one of the greatest horror games out there. Parasite Eve, unfortunately, isn't without its flaws, though I can basically relegate all of its flaws to the Chrysler Building, it being a 70-floor, boring-ass grind filled with glorified meat sack bosses that take forever to chop through. Otherwise, this game is stellar. The main game is very well paced, combat is fun and works incredibly well, the creatures are unique and cool as all hell, and the story is sufficiently horrifying without relying on cheap jump scares or anything like that. The music is also top tier, perfectly done for each section in the game, from the haunting, semi-human sounding melodies to the more fast-paced tunes to aid in the more tense moments of the game. It's 100% worth a play today if you're looking for something to play this Halloween. As always though, my name is Manticore, this is City State Manticore. Have a very wonderful Halloween, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.